multi-paragraph answers. So let's check this out. First things first, vocab. Alexander, can you read this slide for us, please? All right, let's go with Amy. Can you read this slide, please?
Serendipity. Definition: good luck in making unexpected and fortunate discoveries. Example: usually that serendipity felt like the nicest thing the universe had ever done for her. Egregious. Definition:
Egregious.
conspicuous. Ingredient.
Yeah.
Definition: conspicuously and outrageously bad or reprehensible, really bad or offensive. Example: this conduct is very egregious, and I don't think anybody would argue that if it was committed by an adult, that the punishment who will be cruel and unusual.
All right, very nice. Very well done. So two words here, very creative uses of these words, serendipity and egregious. Both very kind of almost dramatic words, like they express a very severe or significant feeling. So serendipity is a very good, fortunate type of feeling. It's a really good luck. It's a noun. So basically, if you're ever saying the word fortune, like good fortune, good luck, um, if you're describing a situation like that, you can replace, that you felt good fortune with serendipity. So it's a noun. So you replace it with another noun. You're not going to use it as an adjective. You're not saying that you felt lucky or you felt serendipity. That's not the same thing. That doesn't work out. You have to make sure you're using it as a noun. So good luck, good fortune, things along that nature. Egregious, this is an adjective. This is when you do something very bad, very almost offensive, uh, something that is kind of looked down upon. So if you're doing something egregious, it's not a good action. So this conduct is very egregious, and I don't think anybody would argue that if we're committed by an adult, the punishment would be cruel. So pretty self-explanatory in that example. The conduct, whatever this person did, really bad, just offensive, that kind of stuff. So using these two words, serendipity and egregious, let's write about the following prompt. Again, this is another one of those opinion writing prompts. So make sure you're answering the question and using the vocab word. So the question says, if you could change one thing about the world, what would it be and why? So the question's in the chat. Again, aim for at least 4 sentences in your answer. And the definitions are on the screen. Egregious is probably going to be an easier word to use. Try your best to use serendipity correctly. The example would help you out. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right, so it's been, I think, around 7 minutes so far. So I see one answer, which is great. I'm going to give you guys another couple minutes to wrap up your answers. Please try to submit within those couple minutes, and then we'll take it up. All right, so let's take up these answers. I think enough time has passed. If any more answers come in, feel free to submit. All right, Nathan, can you read your answer, please?
Something that would change about the world would be that there would be no accidents. For example, there's so many egregious car and plane accidents. And it's very bad. It ends many lives and it's bad in general. Additionally, sometimes serendipity people would be in these situations, costing them a lot of money and time. Overall, if I could change one thing about the world, it would be zero accidents.
All right, solid answer right here. So pretty clear what we're talking about. Definitely did a good job of staying on topic and providing some examples. In terms of using the vocab words, for sure, one word we got to change up. Let's take this up though. So something that I would change about the world would be that there would be no accident. So the phrasing here, it's very clear what you're talking about. That's not the issue, but the phrasing is a little awkward. It's a little wordy. We can make this sound a little more smooth. We can say something like, something that I would change about the world would be to reduce the number of accidents. Would be to reduce the occurrence of accidents. Let's say that. Of accidents. For example, there are so many egregious car and plane accidents, and it's very bad. Okay, so egregious used perfectly. Excellent job right here. Egregious car and plane accidents makes sense. If you want to say egregious cases of car and plane accidents, that also makes sense, but totally fine answer right here. This part is probably where I want to change things up. So saying that and it's very bad, and then immediately following by saying essentially the same thing again. It ends many lives and it's very bad in general. It's repetitive. It's repetitive and it's a little bit of like not the highest vocabulary or writing style. So let's fix this up a little bit. So for example, there's so many egregious car and plane accidents. Let's take this out, that often claim numerous lives and result in heartbreak. Heartbreak? Yeah, sure. So we're not really changing the thought of what you're saying. The content is still roughly the same, but we're just making it sound a bit more smooth. Additionally, I'll put a comma right here. Sometimes serendipity people would be in these situations. So this, right now, the way we're using it as an adjective. This word is not an adjective, so it can't be used like this. We got to change it up a little bit. We could say something like, sometimes people who are experiencing a moment of serendipity end up being, I guess, caught up in a string of bad luck. I don't know, something like that. So sometimes people who experience a moment of serendipity end up getting caught up in one of these horrific accidents, costing them time and money. That's an excellent point to make. Costing them a lot of money and time. Solid. Overall, if I could change one thing about the world, it would be 0 accidents. Let's try to make this a stronger conclusion. Let's say if I could change one thing about the world, it would be to eliminate accidents and create a safer environment or safer world. All right, so again, the content of what you're writing, really good, excellent point to make. Just the phrasing is a bit off. But normally your writing is, perfectly fine, Nathan. I don't think this is a major issue. We'll work on this for next time. So moving on, that was the only answer I got. Moving on, let's check out our novel discussion. Oh, never mind. I got one answer here. Amy, try to submit your answers a bit sooner. Amy, can you read your answer, please?
If I could change one thing about the world, I will eradicate poverty. Poverty might lead to a range of diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, mental illness, etc. If there was no poor people, the egregious cases, such as stealing, will be declined to the lowest point. People will also have more opportunities to learn and enjoy life, making more gifted students find their path into the world and get serendipity.
All right. So I really like the take that you're going here. You're kind of leading onto a cause and effect paragraph as well. You're talking about how poverty can cause certain things. Yeah, really creative paragraph. Let's check this out. So if I could change one thing about the world, I would eradicate poverty. Very strong word choice right there. Excellent topic sentence, straight to the point. Poverty might lead to a range of diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, mental illness, etc. If there was no poor people, I think this should be were. If there were, if there were no poor people, um, actually, let's change this phrasing. So phrasing it this way is not necessarily the nicest way to speak. Um, let's say if there was no wealth, no significant wealth differences in society. The egregious cases such as stealing, but we don't really have to say such as. We can just say egregious cases of stealing. If you want to talk about other cases that are caused by poverty, you can. But stealing is probably what you're focusing on here. So let's get rid of such as, let's only focus on stealing. So the egregious cases of stealing would be declined to the lowest point. Nice. People will also have more opportunities to learn and enjoy life, making more gifted students find their path in the world and get serendipity. Making more gifted students find their path. I think this word choice, let's change it up. Let's say allowing for more gifted students. Oops, wrong color. All right, allowing for more gifted students to find their path. It's a great point to make into the world and get serendipity. So this phrasing is a little awkward. Not necessarily to get serendipity, but you can say to get or to experience a life of serendipity. All right, so Amy, really well done. Excellent answer right here. Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points. If we have more time, you can add on to these points. I'd like to see, what kind of information you can provide. But this is a really strong answer right here. Nicely done. So now that is, I assume, the final answer. Let's check out our novel discussion for this week. We have a novel called, whoops, I didn't change this. A Separate Place by John Knowles. Let me just change this up. Alrighty. Melinda, can you read this slide for us, please?
Set during World War II, A Separate Peace follows Jean Forrester, a quiet and intellectual student at Devon School, a boys' boarding school in New Hampshire. He becomes best friends with Phineas, Finney, an athletic, charming, and carefree boy. As their friendship deepens, Jean develops feelings of envy and insecurity, which led to a tragic accident that changes both of their lives. One day, Jean jounces a tree limb that caused Finney to fall and shatter his legs, ending his athletic future. As guilt and denial plague
Jean, he struggled to confess and reconcile his actions while Finney refused to fully accept the truth. The novel explores the themes of friendship, identity, jealousy, and the internal war that mirror the external global conflict of World War
II. All right. Excellent job. Thanks for reading. So, in this novel right here, we're mainly looking at two characters and how they interact with each other, right? So we have two characters with different personality types. Jean, quiet, intellectual, and Finney, or Phineas, athletic, charming, carefree, kind of, opposite characters, polarizing personalities. But they have a pretty solid friendship, a pretty deep friendship to begin with. Eventually, it becomes a little sour. You get feelings of envy, feelings of insecurity, things like that begin to creep up. And then a tragic accident happens that changes their lives. So we will kind of delve into that. We'll check out how friendship, jealousy, and the whole setting of this novel plays a role. Again, the setting is during a World War II, so we can kind of have an idea of what the atmosphere is like, what the time period is like. So let's see if we can answer a few questions about this passage from the novel. We, of course, have our context and then our passage. Nathan, can you read this slide for us, please?
Context. This passage comes from early in the novel when Jean begins to question the nature of his friendship with Finney. Although on the surface they appear close, Jean secretly harbors jealousy and believes that Finney is competing with him in subtle, manipulative ways. Passage. I was beginning to see that Phineas could get away with anything. I couldn't help envying him a little, which was perfectly normal. There was no harm in envying, even in your best friend, a little. The deadly rivalry was on both sides after all. I could feel it. The straining toward a level of achievement which had nothing to do with studies, which existed only in relationship to Phineas. It was all cold trickery. It was all calculated. It was all enmity.
All right. Excellent job. Thanks for reading, Nathan. So, our passage clearly describes how the relationship's becoming a little sour. We get to see some ideas of envy, some manipulation. We're trying to see a little bit of how that jealousy is creeping in. Let's answer a couple questions, hopefully, about this situation. First question, how does the passage reveal Jean's internal conflict and perception of his friendship with Finney? So this is all about Jean's internal conflict. What's he thinking? What are his feelings towards Finney? All that kind of stuff. So be as detailed as we can. I'll put the question down here on the same page. If you guys have any questions for me, please let me know. As always, try to answer in 4 to 6 sentences. I'll give you guys around 7 minutes. I'll post the summary as well into the chat if you guys want. So 7 minutes, we'll take this up. Be as descriptive as possible. All right. So far, it's been around 10 minutes, so it's a little over our time limit, but it is a longer answer. So I'll give you guys another minute or two to wrap up your answers, and then we'll take up what I received. All right, so let's post our answers here. All right, Nathan, can you read your answer for us, please?
The passage reveal Jean's internal conflict with Finney in many ways. One example of this is when, in the beginning of the passage, he talks about how he was always inveighing. He later talks about how he was normal about the about the rivalry between them. This shows clearly how jealous Jean was towards Finney, which shows his conflict and perception of his friendship with Finney. Additionally, at the part where he spoke about how normal he was, it could be a sign of mixed negative emotions because a person wouldn't talk a lot about someone being normal. Overall, the passage does reveal Jean's internal conflict of his relationship with Finney in many examples.
All right, nicely done. So we got a pretty strongly formatted paragraph right here, very clear topic and conclusion, and we provide some examples. Let's check this out. So the passage reveals Jean's internal conflict with Finney in many ways. One example of this is when in the beginning of the passage, he talks about how he was always envying him. He later talks about how he was normal and about rivalry between them. Let's say, actually, when you say normal, try to provide some detail about what exactly is normal about them or about himself. It's a bit vague when you just say he talks about how he was normal. So let's edit this. Let's say the rivalry between them. This shows clearly how jealous Jean was towards Finney, which shows his conflict and perception of his friendship with Finney. All right, nicely done. So it's a good, solid sentence to make to tie it back to the question. Additionally, at the part where he spoke about how normal he was, It could be a sign of mixed negative emotions because a person wouldn't talk about someone being normal. Overall, the passage does reveal Gene's internal conflict of his friendship or of his relationship with Finney in many examples. So again, we're talking about being normal. We're talking about a portion of like the passage itself. So we are referring to a lot of things where Gene talks about blank. It would be a lot clearer, a lot easier to understand, a lot easier to dissect if you provide those quotes. So it's a solid answer, but the answer is a little unclear. If you provide some specific examples, some quotes, that would make this a lot easier to follow, a lot easier to back up. But solid stuff nonetheless, Nathan. Let's check out the next answer. Alexander, can you read your answer, please? Oh, sorry, your mic doesn't work. I'll read your answer. Gene says that I was beginning to see. Okay, so first of all, let's change the spelling. All right, I was beginning to see that Phineas has to be capital, right? Could get away with anything. I couldn't. Whoops. So these corrections I'm making are very simple. They're careless mistakes. They take time for me to edit. So if you wanted to save the time for me, just make sure you write them normally. I couldn't help envying him a little bit. I couldn't help envying him a little bit. Is that exactly what they say? Yeah, okay. Sounds a little awkward. Oh, I forgot, comma right here. When you're introducing the quote, you need to put a comma right before the quote. And the period actually goes inside the quote. All right, so it clearly states a quote. Excellent. Let's see what else we say. This shows me that Gene was jealous of Phineas. His intentions might get bad or worse. Okay, so kind of a weird phrasing here. We can just say his intentions might not be. Shows me that he was jealous of Phineas, and his intentions might get bad. Let's say that. And whoops. Take the period out, take this out. Intentions might get bad. And we can remove the or worse part. Put a period right here. He said that there was no rivalry on both sides, so again, careless mistake, make this capital. So I think he is going to do something horrible. Gene's relationship with Phineas is going to get worse if this rivalry goes on. All right, solid answer. We're talking a little bit too much about what you think might happen in the future. The question instead is asking what you think is going on in Gene's head. So what is the internal conflict? Meaning, what is he, what kind of emotions is he going back and forth about? Is he feeling positive about the relationship? Is he feeling negative? Does he feel envious? Is he happy? Is he admiring Phineas, or is he jealous of Phineas? That kind of stuff. So it's a lot of back and forth that you should be talking about. That's essentially what internal conflict means. Perception of his friendship. Okay, rivalry. That is what I was looking for. That he thinks there's a rivalry. So good job there of including that point. Yeah, so as long as you stick to what the question's asking, would have been a really good answer, strong answer for sure. But solid start nonetheless. Good job of including a quote. We've got a couple more answers. Let's check these out as well. All right, Amy, can you read your answer, please?
This passage reveals Jane's internal conflict and perception of his friendship with Finney Jean, although envying Finny, also couldn't ignore their friendship. In this passage, he begins to battle with himself, thinking there was no harm in envying even your best friend a little. His perception of his friendship with Finny was contradictory because he secretly harbors jealousy and cannot face his inner self directly.
All right. Good point. Fairly strong answer, well worded. Let's take it up. So this passage reveals Jean's internal conflict and perception of his friendship with Finny. Okay, solid. So try to include your own opinion in that topic sentence, but it's a fine topic sentence. Jean, although envying Finny, also couldn't ignore their friendship. Good. So this point right here is starting to talk about their internal conflict. In this passage, he begins to battle with himself, thinking, let's put a space here and a comma, actually, right here. Thinking there was no harm in envying even your best friend a little. His perception of this friendship with Finny was contradictory because he secretly harbors jealousy and cannot face his inner self directly. Really strong closing sentence right here. Let's see. So yeah, you do answer the question, but you could definitely go deeper into this. You have a lot of good points, but for whatever reason, you kind of just stop your points and you never actually back it up a little further. So try to get into that habit. Try to, you already do a good job of recognizing what the strong point is. Try to just go a little deeper into it. Explain it a little bit more with one or two more sentences just to really knock that answer in, make it stronger. He battles himself thinking, okay, so we're talking about him battling himself. So for example, you can talk about what are the two sides that he's, dealing with. He's dealing with supporting a friend, admiring a friend, versus being jealous of that friend and whatever thoughts come with that. So you can bring that up next time. Otherwise, really nice answer. Melinda, can you read your answer, please?
Sorry, in this passage, it shows that Jean is starting to feel unsure about himself and where he fits in the world. Instead of just enjoying his friendship with Finny, he begins to think too much and questions everything. He thinks that Finny might be trying to trick him, but he doesn't know why. This shows that Jean is dealing with something, not just with Finny. His thought shows how fear and doubt can change how we see others. Instead of trusting his friend, Jean lets his own worries get in the way.
All right, excellent. Again, another very well worded answer. Really good points made here. So in this passage, comma, it shows that Jean is starting to feel unsure about himself and where he fits in the world. Instead of just enjoying his friendship with Finny, he begins to think too much and questions everything. He thinks that Finny might be trying to trick him, but he doesn't know why. So this point right here, this would be an excellent opportunity for you to include a quote, because this is like a bold statement, a bold claim that you're making. If you're going to say something like this about a character's intentions, you got to back it up. You can't just say it randomly. To provide information to prove this statement. This shows that Jean is dealing with something, not just with Finny. Let's be a little more clear. He's dealing with something internally, not just with Finny. His thoughts show how fear and doubt can change how we see others. Instead of trusting his friends, Jean lets his own worries get in the way. Excellent. These are perfect points to make. Very strong points. So Melinda, this is a really well done answer. Again, just try to add a quote just to, further provide some detail, but otherwise very strong. Okay, so let's move on. We have another question, but I don't know if we have enough time for that. I want to go to the cause and effect passages. So like I said in the beginning of the class, I don't know if everyone was here, but we've already done a handful of exercises where we break down causes, and then separately we break down effects, writing one paragraph each for both of them. Now the goal for today is to write multi-paragraph answers. That means your answer needs to be 2 paragraphs, one about cause, one about effect. So straightforward stuff today. We're just kind of looking at topics and writing our own paragraph. We're not dissecting anything, nothing crazy. So this is the first exercise for today. Again, you're writing your own cause and effect paragraph about the following topic. Try your best to list 2 to 3 causes and effects. So this should be paragraph. So 1 paragraph for cause and 1 paragraph for effect. So you're going to be talking about the causes and effects of sleep deprivation among students. So try to be as descriptive as possible. Try your best to include at least 2 causes and 2 effects. And make sure you format your answer correctly. Each paragraph, let's try to aim for 4 sentences. And I'll give you guys around 10 minutes. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll take these up whenever you're ready. Right, so I got a couple answers here. Let's check these out. I'm going to put them on another page. All right, so this is all about sleep deprivation. Alexander, I'll read your paragraph for you. Oh, actually, your mic is working. Okay, you can read your paragraph, please.
When students don't get enough sleep, they can't restore their energy for the next day. Some students study so hard that they forget what the time is and keep studying on and on. While some other students play video games all night for fun. Playing video games is totally fine when it comes to earning it and playing at a reasonable time in the day. But playing at night is the worst possibility that can happen. When playing video games, it's even easier to lose track of time than studying. So most students tend to play for a long time, such as 2 to 5 hours, and don't get enough sleep and decrease their vision. I think that every student should have a schedule so they can free up some time for gaming or extra studying.
All right, nicely done. So we're talking a lot about what appears to be the causes. So the topic was sleep deprivation among students. And we're talking about how sometimes students can be studying all night long. Sometimes they can be playing video games all night long. Those are the causes of sleep deprivation. But we don't have any information about the effect. We don't have any info about what happens because of this. So, we're missing a whole paragraph essentially. So you got half of the answer. Just make sure you're doing both parts of the answer. 2 paragraphs, 2 separate ideas, one about cause, one about effect. So let's proofread this. When students don't get enough sleep, so it's got to be with the apostrophe, obviously. So it's another careless mistake, okay? So these mistakes, I'm very confident that you know the correct way to write it. Just write it correctly the first time. When students don't get enough sleep, they can't, like even right here, we're missing an apostrophe. They can't restore their energy for the next day. Some students study so hard. Again, another careless mistake. You got to really clean these up, okay? So hard, they forget what the time is and keep studying on and on. Let's say throughout the night. They keep studying throughout the night. They forget what the time is and keep studying throughout the night. We don't need that comma. While some other students play video games all night for fun. Let's change while to meanwhile. If we have the word while there, it kind of sounds like an incomplete sentence. We're kind of leading our sentence on as if we have another thought that we're going to continue with, but you don't. You end it with a period. So let's change it to meanwhile. Some other students play video games all night for fun. Playing video games is totally fine when it comes to earning it. Let's say instead of saying it, let's say what it is. So when it comes to earning leisure time, so playing video games is totally fine when it comes to earning leisure time and playing at a reasonable time in the day. Playing video games is totally fine. So instead of saying when it comes to, let's say as long as you are earning leisure time. Whoops. As long as you're earning that, can't type, that leisure time. And playing at a reasonable time in the day. Playing at night is the worst possibility that could happen. Okay, sure. When playing video games, it's again, apostrophe. It's even easier to lose track of time than studying, so most students tend to play for a long time, such as 2 to 5 hours, and don't get enough sleep and decrease their vision. So we have a lot of different information. Got a lot of different points that we're making in this one sentence. It might be best to split it up. So students tend to play for a long time, such as 2 to 5 hours. And that can be our first sentence. And we'll put a comma right here. Then we can say, as a result, they don't, you have it right here. Apostrophe. Cross this out. Okay, as a result, they don't get enough sleep and also worsen their vision. And how do they worsen it? Let's be more specific. Let's say they worsen their vision from prolonged screen time. Whoops, that's 2 words. I think that every student should have a schedule so that they can free up time for gaming or extra studying. Okay, so again, note, this paragraph is entirely about the causes. You are missing the effects. All right, nevertheless, the causes that you wrote down were pretty good. Definitely solid and well described, well, explained. The wording here and there can be improved, but the big issue is that you're missing a whole paragraph. We got we got 2 more answers. Let's check this out. All right, Nathan, can you read your answer, please?
There are some causes of sleep deprivation among students. One cause is just not getting enough sleep. If someone, especially students, don't get enough sleep, then it's pretty self-explanatory that they would get sleep deprivation because they aren't restoring energy that they use during the day. Another cause is about the quality of their sleep. For instance, if you don't sleep well, then it will lead to sleep deprivation because, well, it's ruining your sleep and rest. Additionally, there are some effects that occur after these causes. One effect on the first cause, the lack of sleep, is obesity. For instance, if someone were to have lack of sleep, they wouldn't move as much. Due to this motivates them to eat and exercise less, leading to obesity. Additionally, obesity is a huge problem for everyone, and especially students. They need a fit body to stay active while in school. A second effect on the second cause is the quality of sleep. For instance, it could influence memory loss, learning, and decision making. This is because they don't have a proper break for their body, making them to slowly lose their ability to work well. Especially for students, they need their brain to function well, or else they wouldn't be able to work and focus.
All right, so very well formatted, clearly split up your cause and effect, and you brought up a lot of good points, solid points, but the way you describe them can be improved. So let's check this out. So there are some causes of sleep deprivation among students. One cause is just not getting enough sleep. So what causes sleep deprivation? Not getting enough sleep. That's not necessarily a cause. That's essentially defining sleep deprivation. So sleep deprivation essentially means lack of sleep. So this is not a cause. This is merely a definition. So let's move on. If someone, especially students, don't get enough sleep, put a comma here. If someone, especially students, don't get enough sleep, then it's pretty self-explanatory that they would get sleep deprivation because they aren't restoring any energy they use during the day. Okay, so them getting sleep deprivation is not due to them not restoring energy. This point right here is a little confusing. Again, I think it's because we're too focused on the fact that sleep deprivation means lack of sleep. That's, again, merely a definition. We're not actually explaining a cause yet. We haven't talked about any causes. So this point so far, it's a little awkwardly written, and probably not the most important point to make. Let me just make a note here. Slightly out of place and awkwardly written point. All right. Another cause is about the quality of their sleep. For instance, if you don't sleep well, then it would lead to sleep deprivation because, well, it's ruining your sleep and rest. All right, so this is fine. This one is not a bad cause to include. Quality of sleep can, of course, cause people to wake up throughout the night, have inconsistent sleep patterns. If you describe that a little bit more, that would make this a pretty solid point. Is the quality of their sleep. For instance, if you don't sleep well, it would lead to sleep deprivation. Okay, so this is not really an important point to make. Let's say, for instance, if you experience inconsistent sleep patterns and are waking up throughout the night, then it would lead to sleep deprivation. So we can cross this part out, and we can cross this part out. All right, moving on. Additionally, there are also some effects that occur after these causes. One effect on the first cause, the lack of sleep, is obesity. So your first effect is obesity, solid. Let's see how you explain it. For instance, if someone were to have lack of sleep, let's say that. If someone were to lack sleep, they wouldn't move as much. So this point is not that strong because it's not guaranteed. It's not always the case. There's plenty of professional athletes that probably experience lack of sleep. So, for example, if someone were to lack sleep, there is a chance that they aren't moving out much. Oops, all of this red, that they aren't moving as much. Due to this motivates them to eat and exercise less, leading to obesity. Additionally, obesity is a huge problem for everyone, and especially students. Again, put a comma here because we're kind of interjecting ourselves by saying and especially students. So it's a huge problem for everyone, and especially students, since they need a fit body to stay active while in school. A second effect on the second cause, the quality of sleep. Okay. This is not really a sentence. A second effect on the second quality of sleep. Okay, let's see what else you say. For instance, it could influence memory loss, learning, and decision making. The second effect on the second clause deals with how it could influence. Let's say that. Deals with how it could influence memory loss and whatnot. It can influence, let's say, negatively impact instead of influence. because influence is a little vague. It could be a good influence, or it could be bad. In this case, it's bad. It could negatively impact memory loss, learning, and decision making. This is because they don't have a proper break for their body, making it, so let's say body and mind, because everything you mentioned are mental things, making it to slowly lose their ability to work well. So let's say causing it to worsen their mental capabilities. Oops, I think I highlighted the wrong thing. All right. Especially for students, they need their brain to function well, or else they wouldn't be able to work and focus. Okay, so your effects paragraph, I believe, is stronger, definitely more in depth and a lot more relevant, realistic ideas. It's just worded a little awkwardly. Overall, effects is strong. Cause might just be a little wonky because sleep deprivation, we're describing it rather than talking about the causes. So, got one more answer. Let me post this on the screen. All right. Amy, can you read your answer, please?
This passage, sorry. Sleep deprivation is a significant phenomenon among students. Sometimes the time it takes to finish an assignment may occupy the time that should be used for sleeping. Also, there might be some homework that isn't finished, leading to the next day doing even more homework, resulting in a vicious spiral. Some students might also have procrastination, which might cause sleeplessness. Some students might get boring and starting to want to play phone games without parents noticing. However, games and social media will let students become even more excited, causing sleep disorders which will affect their health and studies the next day. Sleep deprivation in students might cause children overly active and have problems paying attention on class. Sleep deficient children might have mood swings, tending to act impulsive. Also, students who don't get enough sleep are likely to struggle with concentration, negatively impacting their academic performance. If they have played phone games all night, they might even be thinking about games the entire class, making them couldn't learn anything at all.
All right, so nicely done. We have a good grasp of identifying causes and effects. We realize causes are, what leads, like what actions lead to sleep deprivation, and effects are what is the aftermath. What does life look like if you lack sleep? So, very well done. Let's proofread this. Sleep deprivation is a significant phenomenon among students. Sometimes the time it takes to finish an assignment may occupy the time that should be used for sleeping. Perfect. This is a great cause to make, a very realistic and relatable cause. Also, there might be some homework that isn't finished, leading to the next day doing even more homework. Let's change the phrasing here, leading to right here. The homework accumulating for the next day. Resulting in a vicious spiral. That's a great way of describing it. Some students might also have procrastination. Might also have procrastination. Have a habit, that's what I was thinking. Have a habit of procrastination, which might cause sleeplessness. Some students might get boring, let's say bored. Might get bored and start to want to play phone games. We can actually just take the whole starting out of here. So might get bored and want to play phone games without their parents noticing. However, games and social media will let students become even more excited, causing sleep disorders, which will affect their health and studies the next day. Excellent. And affect is going to be spelled with an A. That is the verb version. The noun version is E. Next paragraph, sleep deprivation in students might cause children overly active and have problems paying attention in class. So might cause children to be overly active and have problems paying attention in class. Sleep deficient, that's a good way of describing it. Sleep deficient children might have mood swings, tending to act impulsively. Since we're describing how they act, that's a verb, we have to use an adverb. Also, students who don't get enough sleep are likely to struggle with concentration, negatively impacting their academic performance. If they have played games all night, they might even be thinking about the games during class. They might be thinking about games the entire class, making them couldn't learn anything at all, causing them to struggle to focus on learning in class. Causing them to struggle to focus on learning in class. Causing them to struggle. Yeah, this sounds fine. To struggle to focus on learning in class. All right. Excellent. Overall, really nicely done. The phrasing here and there can change, but it's very minor issues. So that's it for today's class, you guys. I think cause and effect, we have a solid grasp of it. I just want to practice more on these multi-paragraph answers, so we'll do that next week. But that's it for today. Thanks for sticking around a little later. I'll see you all next week. Take care.
Yep, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.